Hi, welcome to GRVOTV, G's Reviews, Views and Opinions. I was initially going to do an unboxing, but to be honest I just find unboxings boring, so it's going to be a very quick unboxing of my new camera, the Sony NEX, and ta-da, here it is. You get all the usual things with it, a charger and the instructions, discs. I don't think you really need to see all that, battery. A couple of things to note straight away. You charge the battery inside the camera, which I do not like. I prefer to take it out and put it in a charger so you can have two batteries and have one uncharged, one in the camera. That's one of the things I don't like, and I don't understand why they do that. I don't see it's a cost saving because you still have to have a charger, but that's a small annoyance. First impressions, other than that, when you get the camera out, is that it's a nice feeling camera in the hand. You've got a lovely grip. It seems to be part metal, part sort of polycarbonate, plasticky stuff, but overall build quality is nice. Not as nice, I don't think, as the GX1 that I'm filming on now, or also the Lumix GX7 that I've also had a look at, but it is still nice, holds up really well, and I think it will wear quite well as well. Just some basic features. You've got it here with the kit lens, which is the new power zoom lens. It's an E-mount lens, and it's a 16 to 50, 3.5 to 5.6. Nothing amazing there, to be honest, but nice little lens. One thing I do like is the zoom ring feature, as well as the power zoom toggle, and then if you're in manual focus, that becomes the manual focusing ring. That's pretty good. Now, I bought it with the and one of the reasons I've bought this camera is because it's come down a hell of a lot in price. I paid £700 for the camera, the lens, and this lens, which is the 55 to 210. Now, what can I say about this lens? It's a fairly hefty chunk of plastic metal glass, but it's not a very good performing lens. Optically, it's 55 to 210, but it's a 4.5 to 6.3, which is not good. When I've just done some initial testing, the autofocus is not particularly quick on it. And you know, if you've got a lens like this, you possibly want it for sports, moving subjects, and I don't think it's going to be ideal for that. But I will do some more testing. I'll give it a chance, but initially I'm not that convinced. And when you compare that to something like the Panasonic Lumix 45 to 150, which is a f4 to 5.6, but roughly the same, it equates to the same range. This is Micro Four Thirds, that's an APS-C sensor, so you end up with about the same focal length anyway. This is a much better performing lens and cheap as chips. But yeah, so we'll half the weight, half the size as well. But yeah, so I'll see how we get on with the 55 to 210 at a later date, but I thought I'd just show you it as the kit. So some of the nice features on this, the screen is nice. It doesn't seem as big as the GX1 I've been using, but it is lovely quality. It obviously articulates, so you can look down on it. You can also look, let's just get that out of the way, you can also sort of look up, so you can do that, which is nice. Yeah, and it's absolutely fine. It's a widescreen format, which is why it looks a bit smaller, but everything's clear and fine. The viewfinder is beautiful. It's an OLED viewfinder, loads of information in here. You've got your ISO, your aperture, shutter. I've also got a artificial horizon, battery, image quality, number of shots left, which mode you're in, exposure compensation. So pretty much everything you want is in the viewfinder. It's nice, bright, and it's big, and also it automatically switches on when you put your eye to it and then switches back to the screen, so that's all good. The control wise, I did a lot of research before I bought this camera, and I wanted it quite a long time ago, but it was just too expensive. It's only now become sort of affordable. And a lot of people complain that it's only got one or two control dials and it's very menu driven, yada yada yada. But I think a lot of the problem is when people review these, they're not getting into them enough and setting them up as they want them. They're just taking the camera out of the box and going, yeah, you know, whatever. So the way I've set mine up, and this is purely for me, if it works for you, that's fine. If not, then fine. I mean, I hate using menus. I just get that. I just hate, and that was a sort of a, oh, shall I, shan't I? But I've gone for it, and I thought, well, no, I'll make it work. The GX1 I've been using is great. It's got lovely controls, and obviously my digital SLR, lovely controls, the D7000. And on this I thought, oh, it might be a bit limited, but I thought there's generally a way around these things. So the way I've got it set up is, if for instance at the moment I'm in aperture priority, and you've got the nice mode dial on top, which looks very similar to the one on my D7000. So we're in aperture priority. This wheel here, which is lovely, I mean it's nice and positive, it's got a nice click to it, but it's nice and easy to turn. That now controls my aperture. Now, when that's in aperture priority, this wheel does nothing. And at first I thought, well, that's rubbish, they could have had that as the ISO or whatever. But you've got a button there, so you press and it becomes your ISO, so that's fine, I haven't got a problem with that. If you then press the down, that's your exposure compensation, and again that dial does the exposure compensation, that works nice. And then if you go to the left, you've got your continuous shooting, single shooting, bracketing, timer, etc., speed priority, all your different shooting modes there. But the one thing it hasn't got is the ability to shoot from single point autofocus to continuous autofocus, and there's no button for that, and that is something that I quite often switch between, and I was like, oh no. So this button down the bottom, which defaults as a Wi-Fi button, which I thought was a bit rubbish, I didn't realise initially, but after a lot of going through the menus, realised that that is customisable. So if I press the AF mode button, I've got single shot autofocus or continuous autofocus, so nice and easy, and that's made me very happy. And it's little things like that that make the camera you're using a pleasure. If you can get it set up how you want it, you're more likely to use it. And that did bug me for at least 2 days before I realised that that's how I can set it up, which is great. Now, the second thing is I've got no easy access to white balance. I thought, well, that's rubbish, and I've run out of buttons. So what you have is you have a function button on the front, press your function button, and along the bottom here you can have basically 6 different options that you change. But what that means, if I want to change white balance, I've got to press the function button, scroll along, not turn the wheel to white balance, and then turn the wheel to change my white balance, which is not, it's not that bad, but on the fly it's not. I mean, it's fine having that function for like changing from multi-point autofocus to single point and things like that, or the metering mode from multi to spot to centre weighted or whatever. That's fine, I don't mind it. But white balance is something I like to be able to just click a button and go straight into. So again, going through the menus, having a little look through it, I found that you can also, you can't change this button here because that's generally your back button and menu button, so you can't change that, that's defaulted and that's locked. What you can do is change the AEL button, because normally you can change it to auto exposure lock, and there's various kinds of exposure lock you can use. So I thought I'll have a look at that button, because I very rarely use auto exposure lock, I use exposure compensation instead. So what I've been able to do is actually change the AEL button to the white balance button. So again, you press the AEL button, use your dial, and away you go. And that for me is fantastic. So now I've got it set up, I've got my ISO, my shooting mode, my exposure compensation, my autofocus mode, and my white balance, all nice and easy to control. And then obviously your aperture, or if you're in shutter priority, you use that for shutter. If you go into manual, that does your aperture, and then that back ring is your shutter, and it all works absolutely fine. And for me now, I'm very rarely going to need to dip into the menu. which is fantastic. And then what I've been able to do, and I haven't quite finished it yet, on the function, I'm going to take off white balance and put something else on that function, something that you don't use that often but is handy to have in a quick and easy menu. At the moment I've got like dynamic range on there to change between HDR and dynamic range auto or off. And also the picture styles. I might change the white balance one for the one that does the like the black and white and different things like that as well. Just while we're on the subject of menus, it's fine, you know, it's a Sony, it's going to have lots of menus. There's 6 menus, but unfortunately the setup menu is quite a long menu and you have to troll through quite a lot of stuff to find it. It took me ages to find the video modes on here. I thought it would be in camera, because to me it's a shooting mode, so the video modes would be in camera, but they're not, they're in image size. This isn't a touchscreen, by the way, unlike the GX1, but it's no problem. So all the movie shooting modes are in the image sort of image size menu. So there you go. It's got Wi-Fi. You've got your record button there, which some people like, some people don't like. I don't really care where it is. It's just a button you press, you get used to it. No problem with that. Yeah, you've got Wi-Fi and a few apps on here which are a bit gimmicky, but I can use my iPhone to view what's on the camera and take pictures. At the moment I can't do anything other than that, and I can't do it in movie. I haven't had a look at all the apps, but perhaps there's an app that will allow me to do that. But I'm not keen on having to pay for apps. I think there's a time-lapse app. I mean, I'm sorry, but that should be built in, but you know, hey-ho. Now, one of the key features that and reasons I bought this camera was it has the 16 megapixel APS-C sensor, and if you've seen any of my other videos on my Nikon D7000, you'll know that I absolutely love that camera, and I love the sensor in it, I love the images, I like the balance between image quality and file size. It works perfectly for my workflow, and I just love it. And I'm pretty sure that this is the same, if not very similar sensor to that of the D7000. It came out about the same time. It's a 16 megapixel. They're both made by Sony, and when I've started looking at the files and I'm processing them, they look very similar to me. So I think that, you know, so I knew the low light performance would be pretty good. I know what my limits are going to be, etc. So that was a really big draw for me, and a big draw over the Panasonic Lumix GX7, that and price. Shooting speed is pretty good. I've got this on just normal continuous. So that's the normal burst shooting. That sounds to me like about 3 or 4 frames per second. However, you can go into a speed priority continuous. See what that sounds like. Oh, now that's fairly rapid, isn't it? Now, is that focusing or is that locked? Not sure. I'll have a look at that, but yeah, quick enough. But that's fine. Video modes, it's got AVC HD, MP4, 25, 50 frames per second, which is all good. There is no mic input and no headphone input, and a lot of people again complain about that. Why hasn't it got it? Well, I never use that anyway, because I don't believe in having the sound directly into the camera, because you just get so many issues with noise. Electronic noise and the noise the lens makes and all different things, so I don't bother with any of that. It's got stereo mics built in at the front, which seem to work reasonably well, not great, but I do all my sounds separately on a Zoom H1. It's a, you know, it's a fairly cheap item but high quality, get good sound. It's easy to put the two together in post-production when you're doing your videos, so I don't need a mic input, so to me it's not an issue. We do have a pop-up flash, and it's nice. The flash comes up high and moves slightly forward. It's proved to be okay. You can bounce it, but be aware that when you bounce it, it won't allow for that, so your pictures will come out a bit dark. So if you're going to bounce the flash, you need to bump the exposure compensation up on your flash, just probably by 1 stop, and that should be about right. And then you get a nice balanced sort of flash, as long as you've got a decent colour ceiling. It's got some nice features. The HDR mode features pretty good. It takes a burst of shots and sort of merges them all together and comes up with one, and that I've done some testing on that and it's come out really well. There's a panorama mode which I haven't tested yet, but seems to work okay. And the panorama mode is one of those things, is getting used to how your camera does it and the speed that you need to travel in, etc. But that's something that, as I say, I'll pick up as I go along. It's got various scene modes, and it's got all like the colour, like where it's black and white but it just picks out one colour, red, blue, green, whatever. It's got all that on it. It's got these two auto modes, Intelligent Auto and Intelligent Auto Plus, and to be honest I'm probably never going to use those, so I've not even been into them, and I haven't even had a go at them. Yeah, it might be something that I'd try at some point, but it's not something that I'm really ever going to use, and I don't know why you need two auto modes. I don't know. Intelligent Auto Plus, yeah, I don't know what that does, but as I say, perhaps I'll have a look at that at a later date. You can make the screen live, as in exposure live as well. So at the moment it's all dark, and as you can see, as I'm changing the exposure, the screen does change, which is nice when you're in manual mode, because you are getting a sense of what you're looking at, and it also does that in screen. That's an option you have to switch on, because I have heard someone say it doesn't do that, but you go into the menu, you turn it on, it works absolutely fine. You don't notice it if you're using it in PA or S, because it's compensating. Unless you're way off on your exposure, it will look fine anyway, so that's quite useful in manual mode. You've got focus peaking, and you can change the colour and the sensitivity of the focus peaking. Not something I'm particularly good at using, but it seems to work okay. Yeah, that's about it really. So far I'm happy with it. All I've done is taken a few shots out in the garden. I haven't been out with it yet, and I will do another video once I've used it for a little while longer and really got into it, and I've got some decent photos. But what I'll do is I will just ping up a couple of photos that I've taken already with it, just of the dog and a couple of plants and whatnot. But yeah, so far so good. The more I'm using it and the more I'm getting into it, the more I'm liking it. My only real bugbear is that bloody lens, that thing there, which is a monstrosity for a start, and it's slow to focus. It's a 4. What did I say? A 4.5, a 4.5 to 6.3. It's if they can make a lens this size, which is half the size, half the weight, but the same focal range. I know it's micro four thirds and this is APS-C, so I'd expect it to be a little bit bigger, but if they can make that a 4.56, why can't they do that as a 4.56? And I know it's a cheap lens, but then so is this. So I mean, I have written to Sigma and I've asked them if they're going to come out with a Sigma E-mount, sort of 55 to 200 equivalent, which would hopefully be far, maybe an F4 or something. I know the Sony are bringing one out, but it's going to just be so expensive. It's not even going to be on my radar, to be fair. But yeah, so anyway, that's my initial thoughts and review on the Sony NEX6. So anyway, please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I'm GRVOTV, G's Reviews, Views and Opinions, and I'll see you soon. Cheers, bye.